The real problem with President Donald Trump. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and I must plead guilty to the crime of giving extremely mixed messages about my feelings regarding our 45th President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. On the one hand, he is obviously not somebody that I ever wanted to be president, and I did not vote for him. But I have been completely happy about the fact that he isn't Hillary Clinton and that he openly attacks the rest of the establishment, not just in the Democratic Party, but the John McCains and Bushes of the Republican Party. Though, obviously, he doesn't orate these criticisms in as graceful of a way possible, which inspires me to be not so stunningly proud that he is our president. Though I have to confess, guiltily again, that I have a personal tendency to cut him a bit of slack for these things, because I am often guilty of the same hot tempered crime in real life. Even more than that, I absolutely love the fact that he challenges mainstream media and refuses to acknowledge certain outlets as reputable organizations because they simply aren't anything besides propaganda, and somebody needs to say so. But yet again, the problem really exists in his delivery. Still, I cut him some slack with this as an individual, probably a bit too much, I am realizing, and I imagine that a lot of people do. I think the reason why is what Milo Yiannopoulos said so many times on his tour about the media, which is that they lie to you and they lie about you. That can only go on for so long before people get pissed off. For me, as an individual, this got deeply personal, not simply because I was a random, abstract person with particular political leanings who was being smeared in mainstream media with the accusation of supposed racism and misogyny due to criticizing things like feminism and Hillary Clinton. I didn't just think, hey, they are insulting people like me. Much more so, I was repeatedly and publicly lied about as an individual countless times with obviously untrue allegations of bigotry over the past handful of years due to my socio-political and political beliefs by personal acquaintances of mine that work in leftist corporate media, which I am fairly positive, in most cases, knew perfectly well that they were lying about me. These are people whose job description eventually came to entail over the years an unquestioned vehement loyalty to feminism, loyalty to Black Lives Matter, and the idea that only white people can be racist, and loyalty put to both Barack Obama and then Hillary Clinton. Dozens of these people that I have known personally for years showed clearly that they had absolutely zero problem publicly throwing me under the bus and accusing me of being an evil bigot the second I voiced not just oppositional viewpoints to, say, feminism, but when I merely questioned feminism in the same manner that James Damore of the Google Memo did. Over and over, I was cast out of Facebook friend groups and shamed as a misogynist for merely mentioning that men's rights activists actually make some really good points. And I can only imagine what these people went on to say about me once I was no longer there on their friend list to defend myself. Thus, when Donald Trump is the sitting president and he tells the same corporate leftist media types of people who peddle the same exact uniform and calculated narrative, and he says loudly that they are fake news and that they can basically go fuck themselves, it is completely satisfying for me. I have to love it. But that is, I must remember, my emotions getting to me. What I am forced to remind myself is that there are mostly two kinds of people when it comes to how they define a good person. There's people who believe primarily in honesty, tough love sometimes, and calling a spade when it is necessary, because they view that as a form of important kindness. I tend to mostly be that type of person. However, I am more than familiar with the other type of person, which is the type that basically values politeness above substance and can divorce themselves from the implications of statements and their subsequent actions to avoid having to think deeply about whether or not the person being so polite is also being kind, ethical, or moral. These types of people are the types of people that think without really looking into policy issues, that Obama was the best president in modern American history, basically because they liked his speeches, and because he is black. These are the types of people that can happily listen to Franchesca Ramsey say stuff to the effect of, "It's not that I dislike white people. It's that I think that the institutions in America were built upon a foundation of white supremacy, which was designed to benefit all white people with privilege even to this day. So I don't hate you for being white. I just think that you should feel guilty about being white." Personally, in the current year, I find no other type of attitude coming from my fellow Americans more vile than the backhanded, smug insults masked with a vapid amount of polite dishonesty that comes from such people as Franchesca Ramsey. And I want her to know, on a personal level, that no, little missy, you will never get the chance to debate me. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that my reaction to her videos should be to tell her to get fucked and go choke on a bag of dicks, you racist, valley girl talking, princess-assed, married to a white guy that must seriously hate himself, pathological lying piece of shit. Though, obviously, my audience might enjoy it if I did say such things, similar to the way that I enjoy it when Trump calls out CNN at press conferences and cuts them off when they are badgering him while he is trying to finish a sentence. So here's the thing. There's countless people in our nation that desperately miss Obama, and they expect presidents to speak like him. They don't care that Obama basically lied by omission constantly about his endless drone strikes, and they certainly don't care that he legalized the usage of propaganda on the American people, probably because they don't know about that. All they care about is the fact that Obama delivered English 101 polished speeches week after week that made them feel good about being non-bigoted Americans who were on the right side of history by helping to elect our first black president. And they also appreciated the fact that Obama never had scandals where he accidentally uttered something blatantly untrue as a result of going off script when he was speaking. Probably because he never went off script. And then, of course, we have Trump, who will basically say whatever the hell he feels like saying at any given moment, occasionally saying things that just aren't true at all, like the fact that he supposedly had the biggest electoral victory since Reagan, which is just, les sigh. Not to mention whatever the fuck other things that Trump haters can and probably will undoubtedly post in my comments that he's said which are untrue. I know there's been numerous things. When we look at these two juxtaposed types of personalities, it is pretty easy to find problems with both of them. On the one hand, it's pretty heinous when somebody is so careful in their dishonesty that they can finely tune a false narrative without even uttering a blatant lie. But it's almost admirable in the way that it's a hard thing to accomplish. On the other hand, while it's good when somebody with no filter calls out a bunch of BS, it's bad if their habit of speaking without a filter leads them down the path of forgetting to try to maintain a standard of integrity every step of the way, and eventually they begin potentially saying untrue things that end up discrediting them. Thus, when we look at situations like the way that Trump spoke about Charlottesville, Virginia, we start to see where we begin to run into problems regarding the reputation that Trump has built for himself in relation to the half of our nation that not just can't stand him, but still more than often believes that he's literally Hitler. These leftist people, and I know dozens of them, actually do believe that Trump will soon mobilize a Nazi-like fascist regime in which he'll replace the Jews from Germany last century with Muslim Americans, and then of course, everybody else goes into the oven too eventually because history always repeats itself and the Holocaust is the only story of a fascist regime that these people even heard about in school and pop culture. These people are generally also the same types of people who are completely convinced that they can read your mind over the internet and determine whether or not you are racist or sexist simply from looking at one text comment of yours. And they remain convinced that Trump is whatever they think that he is, no matter what evidence to the contrary is presented to them. Mainstream media and articles from the leftist blogosphere that Facebook prioritizes in their algorithm have told them the woke truth that has shaped the worldview of their entire echo chamber, and thus, when they demand that Trump denounce the white supremacists in Charlotte, there was never going to be an answer that was good enough. It didn't matter that he did directly and more than once say that he thinks racism and white supremacists and Nazis are vile. They wanted him to denounce it, but it was never going to matter when he did. Why doesn't it matter to them? Well, it's not simply because he sounds kind of stupid when he talks if you like the way that Obama delivered speeches, nor is it simply that there's been a massive smear campaign against him for numerous years, painting him out to be the second coming of Hitler. Rather, it's also simply that these people don't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. Trump has mouthed off about so many things and contradicted himself so many times that there's basically nothing he can say that will change these people's opinions of him. So even when he says something true, like that there is violence from both the far left and the far right, the people who need to hear it most will not just tune his words out, but more than likely, they will consciously or subconsciously choose to believe that what he is saying must be untrue. Then, this gets even crazier because you can look at leaders from the actual alt-right, like Jared Taylor, who will say themselves that they don't actually believe that Trump is a racist, as you can see in Sargon of Akkad's recent video, link in the description. Seriously, the alt-right will say openly that they want to use Trump to preserve the white majority in our nation because of his tendency to be firm on immigration. But even the alt-right doesn't think he's actually a racist, and they say so publicly. And of course, Trump says he's not a racist over and over, and I've still yet to see the clip of something he said that was explicitly racist. But, of course, it doesn't matter to millions of people on the left. They've seen the selective editing or heard selectively edited clips. It doesn't matter what he says to defend himself because people have been told a narrative by mainstream media and the blogosphere, and Trump has shown himself to be a loose cannon verbally that doesn't always say things that are true anyway. So people can assume the worst. And they are told to do so by media all day, every day. It's a really annoying state of affairs. I guess what I am hoping at this point is maybe just that more people become aware that the alt-right doesn't even think that Trump is a racist. I think that that's a key point that far leftist radicals should know. That's all I have to say for this video. If you want to throw me some bones on PayPal, you can email me, email in the description, and hit the bell button if you haven't already done so already so that you hopefully get notifications. It's next to the subscribe button. Good night.